All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Amy Wyant. I'm the new Executive Director here over at the Otsego County Conservation Association, and I'm very excited to have everyone with us today. So I think with no further ado, we'll jump right in and have some fun. Today, I will go through a couple of little, not ground rules, but just guidance for us, things that will keep us moving forward and having a great time. So this is an interactive webinar. Even though for a portion of it I will be talking, feel free to ask questions anytime. And if you're anything like me and the questions kind of get somewhere else, feel free to pop them right into the chat. So when we do open everything up for conversation, we can use our microphones, but also have those questions pre-listed in our chat so that we can make sure we don't forget anything important. All right, very good. All right, so things that we're going to cover today. This is going digital, really focused in today on non-for-profits and how to take what you do currently or previous to our current situation here, and how do you take that digital? Whether that was something you were looking for anyway, wanting to take more of your content digital so that you can serve your constituents in many different ways, or something that you're kind of almost pushed or forced into a little bit with our new situation. But these are the things that we're going to cover. So we're going to look at planning. So how do we start when we're going digital? What does that mean for a lot of us? And some of the options on doing that. Second that we're going to look at is going to be digital resources. So what are some of the helpful, useful bits that are out there to help us keep our stuff moving forward and keep us sane as we're trying to do this new thing. Then we'll also go over things to think about. So questions that we want to ask ourselves, questions we want to ask our staff, and questions we want to ask our constituents before we decide to go whole hog digital. Then we're going to have some demonstrations. So these are pre-recorded demonstrations, and we'll be able to pause them and ask questions about them, so that's totally fine. And then I'm going to go over some quick tips and tricks on a couple of next steps. So helping us as local non-for-profits to come together and see if there's some things we might be able to do to help each other in this process. All right. So what is OCCA? OCCA is a local 501c3 in Springfield, New York. We have three full-time people and four part-timers. It changes in the summertime. We get a couple extra folks joining us for some of our invasive species work. And we work in these three main program areas. So we have education and outreach, research and monitoring, and policy and planning. Now, OCCA is, first and foremost, it is a conservation organization. So we look at conservation and environmental education and outreach. With our research and monitoring, we do a lot with monitoring of local water systems, and assisting with different pieces of research going on in the area. And policy and planning, we do have a planner on staff, and we do have some of these information from different topics here that we have is actually available on our YouTube channel if you're interested in any of the past webinars that they have put on. They are quite good and don't talk quite as fast as I do. So much easier to follow when they're teaching. They're both fantastic teachers. So feel free to jump over there at any time and look at some of that. All right, so what do we do with those topic areas? Over here on the left, you actually see Jeff. He's our program manager, and he is out doing a nature education walk. And we do a lot of different varieties of things. And as you can imagine, with this current situation with COVID, a lot of those elements have changed tremendously. Now, in the next picture you see there, we actually work with the Choose Clean Water Coalition on lobbying for clean water. And I believe that some of the folks in the picture actually are on the webinar today. So next, you're going to see us with our water monitoring. So this is our citizen science water monitoring. It happens throughout the county. Throughout Otsego County, for us to have a very large collection of water quality data that we actually work in conjunction and share our data with Alarm to make sure that we have that data for the county. And over on the right here, well, we have an invasive species poll. So one of the things that we do, especially in the coming weeks, is really working on keeping invasive species under control in our county, and doing what we can to make sure that we have, keeping our ecosystems as clean as possible and removing things like water chestnut and frogbit and all kinds of exciting bits. All right, who am I? So who am I to be giving this webinar today? So I am the new executive director, as mentioned before. Previous to that, I was the Clean Energy Community Coordinator for the Mohawk Valley. And previous to that, I actually did a 17-year stint in IT and digital services. So working at a video coalition, doing a lot with technology and kind of learning how to be a jack of all tech trades. And so that is kind of how this webinar came about. Not that I don't love technology, but I do spend a lot more of my time now in the clean energy and conservation realm. But we are in a situation that needs to kind of pull out all the stops and take a look at our different knowledge bases. And so this is who I am. All right, so now let's jump a little bit into the content. Our first topic, like we're talking about today, is planning. With any project, as we know, planning is a huge part of that project. And same exact thing when it comes to going digital. So when we're talking about planning, we have to look at what is actually good online content. And there's a couple different perspectives for this. So when we're looking at good online content, the first perspective is from our viewer. Who's going to be consuming this content? Who's going to be watching it? Who's going to be interacting with it? And what do they want to see? And what's going to make it useful for them? So for each one of us on the call today, and don't worry, I will open up the call later so I can talk to you all and get some, so we can have some interactive conversation, because that's my favorite part of doing these. But every one of us is coming from a slightly different perspective. Some of us might be environmental non-for-profits, some of us might be more community-based non-for-profits, and we need to make sure that we're producing materials that our actual viewers, people who are our constituents, are going to use and are going to love and are going to actually get some real value out of. So some of the main things we want to make sure we have when we're deciding on what a good piece of content is, it's got to be simple. So it's got to be simple to use and simple to follow, whether it's a series of videos or whatever the project is, it's got to be simple. Next thing, it's got to be short enough to stay interesting. So I always joke, since I'm not a super tall person, that it's got to be short and sweet. It's got to be just like me, short and sweet. So that's really true. So many of us get very excited about our content, and we tend to continue showing a little more than perhaps we should. And that last piece here, the leaving you wanting more, this is actually really important. If we want to not only engage somebody one time, but continue to engage them in the process of our going digital. Going digital is more than just one webinar or one project. Going digital is taking what you do and making it a more interactive online situation or experience than it is right now, which would traditionally have been in a more in-person experience. So we need that wanting more so that it gives our constituent or our viewer a reason to go find some more content and to keep engaging with whatever we're putting out. All right, so when preparing for this webinar, good video length. So I had some ideas in my head, but I wanted to see what the experts out in the field said. So when I looked at some research, and this research really came mostly from a company called HubSpot, which does a very, very intensive look on how people interact with digital content. And so this is some of the research that they came up with. And these were even shorter than I had originally expected, but it makes a ton of sense. So after I looked up this information and saw that Instagram videos were only 30 seconds, Twitter 45, Facebook a minute, then I started to think about my own use of some of these platforms and how I interact with them, and realized that after about 60 seconds on, let's say, a Facebook feed, after 60 seconds, I'm much more likely to keep going before the video is even over. Just move on, keep going. But when we keep it that short and sweet, I watch the entire video, and then again, leaves me wanting a little bit more. and I'm more likely to go looking for more material from that particular person. So further down the list, YouTube videos. So if we're using them more as project updates or program information, somewhere around 2 minutes is actually the sweet spot, as they're talking about. And then this one really surprised me. Online training courses, somewhere between 50 and 30 minutes. So I dug into this a little bit deeper because it surprised me quite a bit. The average human, adult human, can sit and educate themselves or learn or really focus usually for about 45 minutes in an in-person setting. So this shortened time frame, again, made so much sense after thinking about it, but this shortened time frame of 15 to 30 minutes digitally makes a lot of sense to me. After you've worked with someone and you're in a room with someone and you're physically together, it's much easier to keep somebody's attention. But digitally, things are moving. Things are happening all the time. The computer might be dinging because you're getting more emails, or everything is going on around you. So something that can only have you focus in for 15 to 30 minutes makes a lot of sense. And that is important for us as we look at our big picture of how we want to take our content digital. Because many times when you first think about going digital, the first thing you think about is, wow, that's going to be a lot of video footage. Now, it doesn't mean that the 30 seconds we put up on Instagram didn't take 2 minutes worth of footage and then trim it, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it means that our final products, we don't have to have hours and hours and hours of final products to actually engage people and have them want to keep coming back. So this is really exciting for me because it takes that workload that we just thought we had going digital and brings it to something that feels a little bit more of a doable lift, if you will. All right. So again, what makes good online content from your perspective as someone who's either staff or the leader of an organization? How are you going to make good content? Now, these are completely different topics. Now, as we're thinking about what our viewers want, we have to make sure that we can hit these categories, these beats for ourselves. So ease of actually transitioning into digital. Sometimes, even though we may want to go on full production and have the most amazing video ever produced, that doesn't make it easy for us, especially if we have to move quickly. So right now, as everyone knows, things changing every day, sometimes halfway through the day. One thing is good in the morning and it changes at lunchtime. So we have to have an ease of use for ourselves, and also realize from our perspective that it's okay to be in that learning curve, and we don't have to take on the world and try to produce the world when we can just start and make it easier for ourselves and as a staff, an organization, or even as a volunteer team to be able to transition into something more digital. So cost, being able to afford to do the production. Some of these big projects that we're talking about, production cost can be quite a bit, or it might mean software or hardware that's included to do that. And then the last one, shenanigans required to make it happen. So this one I think is one of my most important when it comes to transitioning to something digital. So when I talk about shenanigans, that means if you are trying to transition one part of your portfolio of what you do for your clientele to a digital format, is it going to be a crazy to do to make it happen? So if traditionally you have folks out there in the field, let's say for an environmental organization, you have folks in the field maybe doing buffer plantings or doing invasive species pulls like we're talking about, what is it going to take? Is it going to require that person who would normally be in the field for, let's say, an hour, 6 hours to be able to then produce this video to show what they were doing? Or can we pin it down? Can we make it small? Can we make it work so that we can have that shenanigan factor down a little bit for ourselves to make it easier for ourselves and our staff to keep moving forward? All right, so different ways that you can go digital. As many of you know, you're probably doing a large portion of these anyway, but when we're looking at trying to transition what we do. So a lot of times we've used digital as an advertising means. So we use our digital to talk about programming we've got going on. We use digital to try to connect with people and create a little bit of a community around it. But when we're taking what we actually do as an organization, bringing that digital, we might look at these just slightly differently. And that will be something that we'll talk about when we open up the microphones later on and get that together. But social media, lots of different platforms, as we know, but many of them give you a variety of ways to use the content or use the platform. So going live, putting up regular posts, doing short videos, or sharing content that's relevant to yourself. And many of us are already using lots of those features and doing a spectacular job with those. Next one, what we're doing right now, a webinar or video call. And you have a variety of ways you can do those as well. So today we're using Zoom. It's a program that we already had access to. So when we were looking at those features and those things, hitting those beats for ourselves, ease of transitioning into a Zoom-based webinar was pretty simple. And we actually didn't even, because we were looking at the cost, right? Looking at point number 2, we didn't want to jump into an additional paid service until we really got flowing with our webinars. So we'll be looking at a quick little demo in a moment, how to use the regular Zoom services to set up at least a registration-based meeting, which is what we're using today, rather than a full-on webinar. And then just doing Zoom and WebEx meetings, which I'm sure many of us have been on quite a few lately. Zoom fatigue is a real thing. And all of us, I'm sure, are a little bit tired of doing those, but we can rethink them and use them in different ways to really open up a way to actually take what we do and bring that to our constituents in a slightly different manner. Okay. Next is a video channel of some sort. So YouTube Vimeo channels, any kind of video channel that you can put a repository of content on and then be able to share out that content and constantly reuse it. All right, then we've got some more interactive programs. So these can be through any type of platform, but doing a social media scavenger hunt or hosting something for your constituents for you to get a little information and to bring them together as a community, something like a coffee talk or a happy hour, or even I've seen a few communities out there playing digital games together where they will host a team trivia night, all digitally. And then lastly on the list here, but there's so many more we can do, online summits or forums. So informational summits where we bring usually a variety of these things together in some sort of a pre-scheduled day or week or month, depending on how you want to roll. All right. So things to think about when we are moving through this and trying to plan. What is our audience looking for? Right? This is where you always want to start, because we as the staff or as the people who get really jazzed about the topic, we tend to go off into different directions and get really excited about things, but maybe that's not exactly what our audience is looking for. Or another way to phrase that is, what audience do you want to bring to yourself, right? We're still using this as a form of marketing in a lot of ways, actually in every way, but we want to make sure that we're giving what people want, not just what we think we should put out there. Okay. Some of the other things to think about when you're going through this planning process is, what hardware and software do you already have access to? And really giving yourself a full inventory, whether it's a few laptops and a couple of cell phones, or you have a full inventory of lighting and video cameras and what have you. But knowing what you have at hand will help tremendously. Next, technical comfort for your staff. Are they comfortable taking on projects like this? Do you have staff members who perhaps are a little bit more comfortable while others could use a little bit of a tutorial or informational kind of here's how? And maybe we put different staff members in charge of different opportunities. So if you've got one person who may not want to have anything to do with video editing, but they're okay stepping in front of a camera, that person might become in charge of live video feeds. lots of different things, but these are just ideas to throw around when you're thinking about this as a team. Now, this next one, down at the bottom here, how much time should we spend on this? This is a really important question. When you're looking at the time it's going to take to produce versus the time that you are doing the other parts and pieces of what you're doing, so when you first look at them, sometimes that can just be like, oh, this is going to be way too long and we shouldn't do it. But there's another level on that. There's another filter that we have to make sure we put in there. If we're going to be doing this and we're going to be putting time into it, how can we use that material? How can we reuse that material? How can we leverage that material in different ways? See, I get excited, sorry. How can we leverage that material in different ways so that if we're spending, especially in the very beginning as we're learning how to do this, if we're spending a little bit more time in the beginning, can we recoup that and continue to have this material available to our groups and our people later on? All right, so next question is, how can we engage without overwhelming ourselves? So a lot of things, so I know when this first happened here, when COVID first hit and we first went digital as a team here at OCCA, for myself, I went into full-on production mode and then realized, wow, that's kind of taking over. It's these two questions together. How much time should I spend on this? And I was overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed. We had so much that I wanted to do. So then when we started scaling back and asking all these other questions, we really realized that there are things that we can do to get started, start moving, move things digitally. And if we're not perfect, at least we tried. We're really trying something new. I've been joking since this happened that when I first took the position, I thought I'd be wearing my hiking boots more often than working at my computer, but that's not the way life has been so far. So we're making it work. We're taking on each step and really kind of doing what we can, even if it doesn't come out perfect. And you will notice if you look at back of, or we're live for any of our previous webinars, they weren't perfect, but we got great information across. We were able to answer some really awesome questions that came through our chats and through our conversations, and people were excited about the content, and that's what was important. All right, and then last, what's the purpose of this video? What are you trying to do with this video in particular? So sometimes, again, we get kind of wrapped up in what we're doing, and we decide we're going to do a series of 25 videos. But why? What's the purpose of each and every video? To make sure that you have a real purpose, then it will make sense that you're spending time and effort and energy on it, and also help you move forward. All right. Digital meetings and webinar software. Many of you, like I said, this is going to be review. You're already using some of these or have been on many of these meetings. Zoom, WebEx, GoToMeeting, Google Meet, or Microsoft Teams, all software. This falls into the cost category. So if you're already using one of these pieces of software, being able to use what you've got makes a lot of sense rather than going out and spending on additional pieces of software right now. So these are the things that, if you've got one of these, there's definitely ways that we can use it and be able to do different pieces. Okay. All right, so before we jump into the demos, we did have one chat question. This was about video length. All right. Okay, so the question is, I know it'll move on if there is an ad that starts playing that interrupts the video. Is there a time length that causes ads in case you want to avoid them? So it's a great question, Susan, and I believe that that usually happens, especially in a Facebook situation, that ads will start playing if a video is longer. And I do believe that if you stay within that 60 seconds, I don't know the actual trigger time, but I do believe if you stay within the 60 seconds, most of the time that will absolutely avoid that ad. Longer than 60 seconds, the 2 to 3 minutes usually are the ones that are getting those ads popped in the middle. All right, so I tried to make these demonstrations short, and I will talk through them. I know, right? But here we go. So this is a quick how to set up a Zoom recording to do exactly what we did today. So using a tool we already have and setting up to do a registered event. All right. So once you're in Zoom, you set to schedule a meeting, fill out all the wonderful information. making sure that your times and dates are correct. That has been a fun and exciting project for all of us when we're trying to put things together and send the wrong day or time. But the important thing to do is just to click this little required registration box. This is actually the only thing that's really important, and I do recommend having a meeting password. And you can decide if you want people to have their videos on or off, but always allow people to come in with both telephone and computer, just in case. And then some of these features down here, I make sure that I actually always record any of our webinars like this so that we have that material for later. Even if we don't use the whole thing, we've got it, and then we can use clips and use it as social media posts or what have you. Then we have the copy invitation, and now it'll read slightly differently that says register for this meeting rather than just sending the event. So this is a quick little recording of once you're in a Zoom meeting, if you decided to record it. You have only a limited amount with your basic membership of recording space on their cloud. So if your computer can handle it, absolutely record to your computer, but make sure you've got space available in that first. There are some advanced features when you're sharing screens. So adding portions of the screens or actually pulling files from some of the online options, or just doing a basic screen here. If you're going to show a video that has audio, make sure you check those bottom boxes. And apparently I move a lot faster than I talk when I'm doing my demos. And then you have these floating controls. So the controls are quite helpful when you are in the middle of a screen share, so that you can still control, you can lock the meeting so that you can't, no one else can join you. You can actually show the participants so you know who's there, and also mute and unmute everybody. So if there's a lot of background noise, you can just pop that in, turn it off, turn it on, whatever you need. And then you have this option right off to the right where you have more. So you can mute people when they join, actually notify with a noise, or lock the meeting from there as well. Excuse me. Now you can also pause when you are doing a screen share, which is great if you need to pop between a couple of things or look something up and you don't want everyone to see your messy desktop. That's always an option. And then if you are doing, which you usually do when you're working in more of a whiteboard situation, you have annotations. So you can do writing and that bit. Just like we're using today, we've got the chat feature. Now you can chat to everyone or to individuals one at a time, which is very helpful. And then there we go. So that was our quick little Zoom demo. Like I said, quick. All right. Now, that feature is very, very helpful when, like I said, we're trying to keep our costs down, but we wanted to go into more of a registration-based system so we can communicate with people, know who registered, know who's coming, and have an idea of what's going on. All right. Next on our basics of video editing. So video editing for a lot of folks is very scary. It's not something we're used to doing. It's not something that most of us ever really wanted to do, especially when we are in our non-for-profits and trying to do whatever we can. One of the things I always joked about the whole time I've been in the non-for-profit sector is that you may have one job title, but that does not mean you're not also a janitor, a video editor, you're a handyman, you're everything that's required when it comes to non-for-profits. So there are some really neat available pieces of software. So the one that I'm going to demo, I'll be demoing iMovie for the phone first. So this is for someone who doesn't want to put a lot of muss or fuss into it. And I prefer, what is the phrase? That done is better than perfect. And so even if you're using a small editing software, there are tons of different editors available. This is just the one that I had on my phone. And then we'll be doing a demonstration with a drag and drop video editor that anybody can use on any computer platform. But it's relatively, again, drag and drop. So we really like having that simplicity of being able to move things quickly. So this is using iMovie on the phone. So tap to create a project, very few options. Then you just select what video you want to and say create movie. Once you do that, it brings it into a timeline. So we can move back and forth just using our finger, watch the video, and hear the lovely birds and the wind. Okay. Now, once we do that, we can also add new footage by hitting the little plus, and it just lets us back into our video library to post some additional material. Okay. So now we've got 2 clips in here. And once we've got our clips in here, if you tap on the clip, it'll actually let you do some editing, right? So you can do some fun and exciting things with filters on the actual footage. Then we can come back into this area, and when we hit the little scissors, this lets us trim it. So we can bring our, a whole minute clip down to 30 seconds or whatever it is. Like we said, trying to get things short and sweet. Next, you can actually play with the speed, so you want stuff to move faster. Volume, so if you want to hear those pretty birds. And adding titles and sequences so that you can have materials in there. I do not actually type that fast. I did use the speed up button, so you didn't have to watch me type so slow. And in this mobile option, there are some overarching themes that you can do a whole project filter and doing some fade in and fade out kind of automatically. And when you do that, hopefully you guys can hear the music. But it changes the video tremendously. So all this is 9 seconds. Simple, easy, and then shareable wherever we want. So we can send it by email, we can put it in a box, or not box, but put it up on a digital box or Google Drive, share it to iTunes, or post it directly to YouTube. And then give it a title in your project library, and there you go. You have yourself a video, a little digital video. It's relatively simple. Again, doesn't have to be crazy. We don't have to jump in and be able to produce some, blockbuster film here. But there are a couple of things that we'll talk about when we talk about getting after our demos here, that when you're looking at live versus edited video, if something is edited, if something is supposed to be a full production, people are expecting a little bit of a higher quality of product rather than if you're going live. So if you go live and it's windy and you can hear somebody, but they might be yelling a little bit, just it's in the moment, right? It's supposed to have that in the moment, very raw sort of look and feel to it. When you're looking at something that's edited, you want it to be a little bit more polished, right? We're going to have a little bit more of a things are put together, organized, and so you, when you're looking at it from your organization's perspective, have to decide what makes sense for you. Are you an organization who is a little bit off the cuff and just kind of out there in the field and here's what we're doing and awesome, look at this, we're doing great stuff, we're planting buffers, we're doing this? Or is it something that needs to be a little bit more polished? Are you a program that has some very specific things you want to do and make sure that you're showing the best possible light? So, all right. We've got a couple of more questions here, which is wonderful. So is there any data, one of them is any data out there on how many videos within a series on a single topic that people will keep viewing before they get bored, overwhelmed, even if the length of each is in the sweet spot? That is a great question. So when people are doing a series, actually the series itself still has to fall within that sweet spot of keeping people engaged. So some series are going to take 3, while others might take 10. But as long as you're making sure that each particular topic fits within that series. So if you're doing a series on riparian buffers, and I know I keep coming back to that, but that's a topic that many of us jump in and work on. You might show, it might be a series of 4, and maybe you're showing a couple different styles and a couple different locations. But unless you have some new material to bring to it, you don't want to be repeating yourself. So the more you repeat yourself, the more likely people will get bored with a series and not want to join in. And so as short and sweet as possible. I know that's not exactly what you're looking for probably, but we're just making sure if we can cover the topic, that we make sure that we have that, keep it short enough to be interesting, but not overwhelm, just like you said, because we don't want to repeat ourselves. All right, and that's a great question, Susan. So is there an easy way to edit out wind sounds? Wind is one of the most difficult things to deal with when doing video editing, especially with many of us conservation or outdoor not-for-profits and groups. that the wind around here is constantly blowing, which makes for a beautiful place to live, but not always the best live video out and about. There are a couple of different things you can do for wind. Usually it requires a small additional piece of hardware that you can, even on a telephone, so if you're doing your videos via cell phone, there are small adapter microphones that you can use that will cut down that tremendously and help, usually somewhere between the $15 to $30 range for either a lapel or lavalier mic, both known as that, or even some handheld units are really good at cutting wind sounds down. But, all right, so the next piece of software here, this demonstration is for OpenShot Video Editor. So this is a completely open source piece of software, meaning it's completely free and it's for any platform. So you can use it on a Mac, PC, or Linux machine. This is for computers. And again, I went for simple. So this is totally simple, drag and drop. And this is just an example. There are lots and lots and lots of different video editing softwares out there. And many of them have a lot of features. This one is low on features, but very simple on learning how to use it. So when we take a look here, again, it's all drag and drop. So these are some videos I have on my computer over on the right. And I'm just selecting them and dragging them into this little, where we keep our project files. And then I drag the photo or the images or the videos that I want in my final product down to the different timelines. If I put them in separate tracks, it'll do automatic transitions for me. So when we go from one video to the next, this track system does an automatic transition. It's not a fancy transition, but we'll talk about that in a second. But it is automatic. But that second one is just too long. So we can actually clip by using the scissors tool. And then all you have to do is take the scissors off and then right click and you get this full options of other things we can do, getting rid of the footage we don't want and putting another, one more clip in here. So now when we look at it, it goes clip to clip, and I did speed some of these up so we didn't have to watch panning videos of dandelions. But we can add our own transitions. So they have a transitions tab, and I added some really crazy ones just so we can see, there's a plain one kind of moving as a back to fade, and then one that's a little bit more of a silly so you can really see it. And then there's some different effects that you can do, blurring, brightness, looking at it from some different ways. Then all you do, tell it where you give it a name, super important, because losing your videos is one of my least favorite, but done most often things because I name them odd. And tell it to export, and then you'll notice it pops up on the desktop. And there we go. Now we have a video that we can upload to YouTube. We can share through social media. We can do whatever we want with that final video. All right. All right, some tips and tricks. So with video, you notice when we were looking at the demo, some of the video was in horizontal, shot horizontally with holding the phone sideways. And then some of the video was actually shot vertically, holding the phone up with one hand. You have a lot more flexibility and editability, I think that's a word, editability, with your horizontal video, making it a little more polished. So that's one of those things that automatically takes your level of video from, a side portrait view to using the horizontal video, levels it up right away. Moving closer versus zooming in. So when you are doing like a span, like we're doing a lot of panning here with our dandelions, when you move closer to something, if you can get a smooth movement to that situation, to that new thing you want to focus on, it's actually slightly better than zooming in, because unless it's going to be quite the, there might be gopher holes, what have you. Zooming in is perfectly fine. It's just that when we get to the big picture, if we're ever looking at this photograph or this video, excuse me, in a large scale, the more we zoom in, the more likely we are to have a little bit of distortion in that movement. But I am also not very graceful. No one ever called me Grace. So for me, zooming in usually is how it works, because if I try to take a step, who knows what will happen. So play with that though. When you're looking at it for yourself, try it out. See what works best for you and what makes sense and gives you that final polished video. And just like we said before, a finished product that is that's been edited and is showing up as an advertisement or as something that we want to use as more of a promotional video usually has to be a bit more polished. While live videos are exactly what they sound like. They are as adventurous and and shenanigans can ensue, but they don't have to have that polished look. And there's actually software that you can use. So if you want to bring something out there and call it live, there's software that will send out that video in a live system. So it'll go live on Facebook or live on YouTube, but it's a pre-recorded video. So you can have that kind of in between and a little bit of the, you know, magician behind the curtain situation where it can have a little bit of raw qualities. It's just a capture, but you can clip, you know, mistakes, or if the dog accidentally joined you in the video, you know, you can clip those things out, have a little bit of a rough cut around it, and still let it go live. And most of those do have at least some cost to them, usually about $5, $10 a month. Some of them are a little bit more expensive, but some of the basic ones do a really great job for about $10. All right, so tips and tricks for audio. So I know this is a silly one to put on there, but avoiding wind when possible. And sometimes that just means about when you go out to actually do your video. But we cannot always plan here in New York around the weather. So I understand completely. If you have to go out when the wind is a little bit excited, using a small microphone up near your speaker's mouth or a handheld audio device to try to break that wind will be really helpful. And then always making sure when you're speaking that you're speaking at the microphone. So learn where the microphone is on your device, whether it's a cell phone, camera, what have you, doesn't matter. Learn where the microphone is so that you can make sure that you're getting the best possible quality audio when, you know, it's something as simple as don't put your thumb over it, because I have definitely done that before. And then if all else fails, there is audio editing software that is available. Most of it is, let's just put it this way, I haven't found really great free audio software that I love, but it's out there. And you can actually learn to pull some of those wind sounds or background humming noises out of video. But that, again, adds to the production time, adds to the hours you're putting into it, and may not always be the best. So sometimes if it's a real bad problem, what we do is take the video and actually remove the audio that came with it, because you can split the audio and video in most video editors. Even in that free one we just demoed, you can split the audio and video. You throw out the really windy, noisy shenanigans, and then you do a voiceover. So you start again, hit record, and it will actually record what you're saying here in a quiet, inside space, and still have the video from outside. You won't hear the birds and the bees and that kind of stuff, but at least they'll be able to hear your narrator rather than just hearing a windstorm. All right. So next steps. Can't even read today. So sorry, everybody. So one of the things that we are very excited about is actually we're starting a Going Digital biweekly meetup group for anybody who is working in a local non-for-profit or local organization who wants to talk about projects, get help, help each other with ideas, and potentially collaborate with some of the opportunities that we're coming up with. And in the reminder email that just got sent out, there was a link, and once I stop sharing the screen here, I'll also send it out in the chat to a forum if you're interested in joining us, because we'd love to have, it's free for anybody who wants to join us. We just love to be able to share anything that we can, and when we all come together to kind of share ideas and get creative about it, more amazing things happen. So we're just opening that up to anyone who wants to join us. Part of the form is really just what days are you available, and is it better in mornings, afternoons, that kind of stuff. So, and then the last thing for your next steps is get out there, try something, try anything, try going live, even if it's for 2 minutes. I have a friend who jokingly says you can do anything for 2 minutes. It may not come out perfect, but it'll be exciting, and you'll be putting out content for your organizations. Excuse me. Do a quick info video, or just do a quick video of saying, hey guys, we're learning how to go digital. Come follow our journey as we're learning how to go digital. And then I think what's really, really important and very helpful is hosting a coffee talk or happy hour with your constituency to see what kind of digital material they might be interested in. We never know until we ask. And sometimes our groups and our people who we work with can be amazing in helping us kind of form how we want to do that. All right. All righty. So I'm going to leave this slide up, and this is for my contact information. So if you want to call or email at any time, but we've got another question here in our chat. Good question, Peg. So the question was, is there a lapel mic or a handheld microphone that I recommend? A handheld unit that I've used that I really do like and was inexpensive. I'm not one to spend lots of extra money on video equipment because I want to see what I can do with what I've got. It was actually called a Zoom, go figure, since we're using that as it's not related to the company, but it is a Zoom unit. And then the lapel mic, I actually, when I found a couple that I tried out, just searching for them on Amazon, honestly, and I found one for about $15. I don't know the company name off the top of my head, and my program director actually has it with him right now, so I can't grab that for you, but I will send it out in the replay email of just some suggestions on the lapel and handheld recommendations that we've used before that we do like. So, all right, so with no further ado, thank you guys so much for putting questions in the Zoom chat. That's wonderful, because like I said, it's super easy to forget the question as we go on to new topics. But if anyone is interested, I would love for people to open up their microphones, telephones, and ask questions live, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Back to that sweet spot of video length point you're making. One of the challenges that I've been thinking about a lot with that aspect is, how do you come up with something that's that's really meaningful in a minute and a half when it might take you 10 seconds just to introduce what you're talking about, and a couple seconds to close it out, and it just seems like it's difficult, trying to find the happy medium there of, how to make it so it's engaging but also meaningful at the same time.
Sure, it is tough. And is it all right if I ask a couple of clarifying questions to see if we can work this out a little bit?
Yeah.
What type of topics are you talking about? What is it that you're kind of rolling the idea around in your head that you want to put out there as a digital series?
Well, I have actually been putting out some nature education videos over the past month or so on various topics, and showing people, how to craft things out of wild materials, animal tracking, just basic things like that to get people outside and doing something in nature. But, I'm when I'm trying to show them how to build, how to make forts or any kind of thing like that, and I'm thinking to myself, man, there's a lot more. How do I make this a lot shorter and still make it so they can do it
Right.
on their own?
Well, that actually brings up a really good point, and I actually used some of those today in some of the demonstrations. And it's that speeding up of the video. So especially with something like a demonstration like a fort, you used a fort as an example, you as you talk through it, maybe what you can kind of lean towards when you're thinking about, how you want to plan the video, is having small snippets of telling, so the actual verbiage of what you're going to do, and then doing it. Even if the doing takes 20 minutes to do, then we can speed it up and actually time lapse you so that you can speak for 30 seconds, and then we do a time lapse of your next half of an hour of you actually doing what you talked about. And then all of a sudden it's a 1-minute video and you've built a fort.
Yeah, I thought about doing, building an entire thing and putting it in like really fast time lapse footage, and that would get it down there to that time limit. And like you said, if they don't necessarily see everything in detail perfectly, that still might add to that, leaving them wanting more.
Exactly. Yes. And maybe what you can do, especially at the end of each video, is because you're trying to engage people to do it. But hey, show me how yours came out. Show me where you kind of, when you have them fill in their own little gaps there. So when you leave some gaps on purpose, so you can have people engage back with you to say, look, I did it myself and look how my fort came out, or I did it myself and this is what, these are the tracks I found, whatever it is, so that you can open up a little bit more mystery in it, and hopefully that's engaging for them to go try it.
If you do try that kind of feedback opportunity, is there like a set time period that you offer them to connect with you on that, or just whenever they want to send a message?
You can try to fit it in a time period. So we at OCCA, we tried a digital scavenger hunt, but the weather did not, it was supposed to be a one-day thing, but the weather did not comply. It was in early May, or April. It was actually in April, and it was torrential downpours. So you can put in a time frame if you want. It's really about the project at hand. If it's something small, then yeah, do it within a week, or make it your series for that week is about this particular topic or this thing you want people to do. But play with that. That's definitely something you want to play with, and your constituents best. So it's really, or your end users. So it's really see what works. We're all in this trying things and kind of in, I want to say play mode, but we are, we're out there testing things, trying it out and see what works for us. So ask out, say, hey guys, show me what you do this week. Give them a week if it's a big project or what have you, and see if you're getting some feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks for opening up your microphone. Anybody else want to talk about their project or potential project or questions they might have from what we talked about? I'm actually going to stop sharing the screen, and I will share that link for our form so that everyone who would like to can join us for information to join the group, so we can keep working on that if anybody comes up with a question, or if you're like me and as soon as the webinar is off and you go back and work on your next adventure, you're like, oh, I should have asked X, Y, or Z. Feel free to shoot an email. So my email address is director@occainfo.org. And I will also put that in the chat. And I will answer whatever I possibly can, or bring it to our next group when we all come together for our digital sharing. I know we're a little bit under, so I don't want to cut everyone off. If someone still might have a question, feel free to jump in and ask.
I'll ask a quick one if that's okay.
Absolutely.
We are looking, I work with the local Audubon chapter, and we are looking at the possibility of maybe doing some informal bird chat. So kind of like a fireside, bring some, some of our board members in and answer questions that people might have about birds that they're seeing. If people want to, help with the ID, they can share pictures and things like that. What scares me a little bit about that is that it's so informal, and like you just don't know what kind of things people are going to ask. I like the fact that we could record the session and then edit out anything that might not be applicable to share later.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we get past that fear of the unknown? I expect we just go ahead and do it and see how it goes. Any recommendations?
Absolutely, yes. A little bit is definitely the Band-Aid, right? Rip off the Band-Aid, see how it works. But what I do find is when you're doing something, especially that informal, is you can have a pre-submission. So especially with the sounds and the photographs, so that no one accidentally shares their screen and something that shouldn't be there is there. Having them send them ahead of time. So if there's someone who might be willing to be a repository, that you can kind of throw them into a slideshow, or if that's one way to try to kind of rein it in a little bit. Or if you have a real kind of set agenda of even if the agenda's technically open, here, bring this, we're going to talk about bird calls, we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about that, and hope. But yes, definitely part of it is the cringe and push record and hope for the best, and then edit out whatever whatever comes your way, because because things are unpredictable. They really are. But sometimes it's unpredictable in the other way, Susan. So you get a fantastic, really engaging conversation that you never expected. And that's very exciting when that happens. So I will think positive for you that it will be the second one. But yeah, so having that pre-receiving of stuff can help. And at least or have a few that you or some of the board members have already put together to really lead the direction of the conversation, so it starts in one trajectory.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for joining us. All right. Well, if there are any other questions, please feel free to open up your microphone or to send it via chat, or email is perfectly fine. Some of the other things that are coming up, we do have a couple of invasive species webinars and also some clean heating and cooling webinars that'll be coming up soon. And apparently, like I said, none of us are perfect because Amy totally forgot to put the slide in with the dates and times of those. So I will include those in the replay email. Very sorry. So that you'll have access to those in case any of them interest you. You're welcome to join us. And hopefully some of you will be interested in joining our digital work group to work on some projects and keeping working ourselves digital. So with no further ado, there's nothing wrong with closing up a few minutes early so everyone can get on to their next adventure. But thank you, thank you, thank you. And we will hopefully see you soon at one of our next events. So have a great day, everyone. Bye.